Hi, everybody. So today I am here to talk about my April reading wrap up and what is on my May TBR. So I'm going to go through reading progress, thematic TBR wrap ups for my TBRs for Earth Day, and Oscar nominated movies because I'm a little bit behind on reporting on those. And also I'm going to talk about my upcoming my progress on my other thematic TBRs that I'm doing for May and June. So let's begin. First of all, some reading progress. Eat the Ones You Love was one of my anticipated releases. There are no chapter numbers, but I am on page 165. The next book is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I am on chapter 26, page 330. The next book is Lauren Graham's memoir, Talking as Fast as I Can. I just started this last night. I am on page 59. The next book is a book I borrowed from my mother-in-law called The Monsters of Templeton by Lauren Groff. I am on chapter 28, page 287, The next book is a reread for reading the Asian Readathon, a reread for Asian Readathon, which I am doing with Cindy on YouTube. I will tag her announcement video in the description box, so if you want to participate too, you can have the link to her reading list on Storygraph. And in my reread, I read this in February, and I gave it 5 stars, and it was recommended to me originally by Gabby Reads. And I am on again, this book has no chapters, no chapter numbers on it. I have read 50 pages in my reread. The next book I am reading is Emily Henry's new release, 220 Great Big Beautiful Life. So, my opening thoughts on this book. I love the main characters. Their names are Alice and Hayden, and they are aspiring writers who get the opportunity to interview their favorite, a popular author named Margaret, who has went away from the limelight, and she is wanting to get people to help her write her new book. The plot of this book is very similar to both The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid and The 13th Tale by Erin A. Craig, which I have both given 4.5 stars to. So this book is supposed to be a romance, but so far I haven't seen any romantic buildup between the two characters yet. It seems to be enemies to lovers trope, but there hasn't been too much romance between Alice and Hayden yet. I'm hoping that will come soon. Other than that, I'm really liking this. I think maybe I was expecting a little bit too much from this book before I read it, because I have rated most of Emily Henry's books 4.5 or 5 stars, and I don't know what this is going to be for a rating yet, because I'm only halfway through it. I'm hoping to finish it by the end of next week. The next book is a reread. It is called Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan. I first read this book last year, and I gave it 4.5 stars. It is the story of a woman named Nora, who's a screenwriter, and she's going through a divorce. She's a screenwriter for romantic comedy movies, and her most recent movie is actually based on her real life. So the male lead actor in the movie actually moves in with her and her kids for, character development purposes, I guess. And I love the relationship between Nora and Leo and how sweet Leo is to Nora's kids. So yeah, I gave this book 4.5 stars when I read it last year. The next book is The Stationery Shop by Marajan Kamali. I found this on the Arab American authors shelf at the library, and I just love the springtime setting of it. I am currently on chapter 20, page 193. The next book I actually found through a recommendation list on Instagram about books that describe characters in Schitt's Creek. As you can see from my past videos, most of my character dedicated book recommendations have been from Friends or Gilmore Girls, so I decided to deviate from that TBR a little bit because my other favorite show besides Friends and Gilmore Girls is Schitt's Creek, and this character describes David Rose, who is played by how do I forget his name already? I should know this. He's the I can look it up. Okay. IMDb. There we go. Dan Levy. So yeah, I think this book is a very accurate depiction of David Rose, who is played by Dan Levy, son of Eugene Levy from the American Pie movies, who plays his dad, Johnny Rose. Another book I have read from this reading list that describes David that also crosses over with the Friends TBR is The Devil Wears Prada by Lauren Weisberger. This book was on my original TBR last fall for Friends, and it describes Rachel, and it also describes David, 4.5 stars, and the movie is also really awesome, and I'm going to be watching it again soon because the sequel to it comes out next year, and I'm really excited about it. The movie version of The Devil Wears Prada came out in 2001, and it stars Anne Hathaway and Meryl Streep, who fast became two of my favorite actresses after that movie. Some other books that I recently returned to the library that I wanted to mention the ratings for are Life on Mars, which is a science fiction poetry collection that I read for National Poetry Month. I gave that 5 stars. Then the next book was The Humans by Matt Haig. This is the third book I have read by this author. I have also read The Midnight Library and The Life Impossible. The Midnight Library got 3 stars. That book kind of made me sad and put me in a reading slump. The second book I read, The Life Impossible, got 4.5 stars, as did this book. The Humans. The Humans is a book about aliens who are sent to planet Earth to observe humans. When you read this book, think of the movie E.T. from the 1980s. That's essentially what this book is about. It's about aliens going to Earth and reporting back to their contemporaries on their home planet about how humans interact with each other and how they are interacting with the humans. The next 2 books that I wanted to talk about are called The Poet X and Clap When You Land. These are both by Elizabeth Acevedo, and they are novels that are totally in verse, which I also read for National Poetry Month. And each of these books took me a couple of days to read. I think I usually tend to finish books in 3 to 5 days, but these books took me 2 to 3 days just because they were such fast reads, because they were all in poetry. The next book I wanted to talk about was The Rose Bargain. This is the first book in a new fantasy series by Sasha Payton Smith that I heard about through These Lyrics and Lines when they did their romance reading blog in February for Valentine's Day. Olivia Reads a Latte has also reviewed it, and I will link both of their videos in the description box below. I really love this book, and this book is book 1 in a series, so I can't wait to read the rest of the series. The next book that I wanted to talk about was The Unmaking of June Farrow. This book has been on my reserve list at the library since the end of last summer, so I have been waiting about 6 to 9 months for this, and I was so happy when it finally came in at the library. This was the third book by Adrienne Young that I have read after Spells for Forgetting and her recent release that came out in January, A Sea of Unspoken Things. This is how I would rank Adrienne Young's books. Unmaking of June Farrow was 5 stars. Spells for Forgetting was 4.5 stars. And her new release was 3 stars. And I was highly anticipating that one, and I was kind of let down by it, actually. After reading Spells for Forgetting, I was really excited about reading another mystery book, but it wasn't very mysterious. It was more dramatic about how this girl's twin brother died. The other books I wanted to mention in this video that I have read in previous weeks that I never got the chance to review are Moneyball, which is by Michael Lewis. It is a memoir about sports betting in the Major League Baseball teams, and I read this book for my TBR for Friends and Gilmore Girls because Brad Pitt is in the movie. I love his acting in this movie. He also produced it and directed it, and I think everything comes together nicely from a technical standpoint as well as from an acting standpoint. The daughter of Brad Pitt's character has kind of an anxiety attack because she's worried her dad is going to lose her job, and I think the child actor who portrayed his daughter did a really good job in that scene. The next book I wanted to talk about is Pickleballers. This is a sports romance book that Gabby reviewed in her reading her lowest ranked books on her TBR video, and I agree with her ranking on this book. I did not like it either. I thought it was boring, and I couldn't get behind the relationship because there really wasn't a relationship. It was just them going back and forth to play pickleball. Now on to thematic TBRs. Let me just pull up my document. Where are we? Okay, so the first thematic TBR I wanted to talk about is my TBR for Earth Day, which I basically read throughout the whole month of March. The only book on this TBR that is still outstanding that I still need to finish is the audiobook of The Wild Robot, which I am 70% through. I just need to finish the last couple of chapters. I have loved this audiobook, and now I really can't wait to watch the movie to see how the book is brought to life by DreamWorks. I think DreamWorks is the company that did it. The same company that did Shrek and Puss in Boots. So the books that I read for this TBR were A Psalm for the Wild Built, which is by Becky Chambers. It's a short science fiction novella about a monk who interacts with a robot and the friendship that they build. I really enjoyed it, and this book is the first book in a series, so now I can't wait to read the rest of the series. The next book that I read was for Black History Month. I reread Their Eyes Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, and also Moses Man of the Mountain. These two books were put together in an anthology of Zora Neale Hurston's books, and I gave both of those books 4.5 stars. The next book on this TBR was the book I read for book club last month at Print Bookstore, The River Has Roots by Amal Amaltar, one of the authors of This Is How You Lose the Time War. And I reviewed this book in a previous video, which I will link in the description so as not to be repetitive. The last book, I also read Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey, which was recommended to me by Gabby Reads. 5 stars. This was a mystery book that is set in Antarctica, and it's about a family who's living in isolation, and then a person's body washes up on the shore. They think she's dead, but she's actually alive. They nurse her back to health and everything. I also reviewed that video in a previous. I also reviewed that book in a previous video, which will be in the description. So for Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR, the books that I read this month were Evie Drake Starts Over, which is a romance book about a woman who is trying to move on from losing her husband, and she moves into her friend's apartment, and she becomes friendly with a baseball player who is taking time off from the sport to recover from an injury, and his name is Dean. And obviously the reason why I picked this book for the Gilmore Girls TBR is because Dean is Rory's first boyfriend in the first couple seasons before she starts to date Jess, Luke's nephew. I am also listening to the audiobook of One Day, which I found the book One Day by David Nichols on a reading list on Instagram for books based on Friends characters or books based on a TV show Friends. And I think it was probably selected for this reading list because of the New York City setting. But another reason why I think it was selected is because there is a student-teacher relationship that is very similar to the one between Ross and Elizabeth, because the male main character in this book, his name is Dex, short for Dexter. He he's a college professor at a college in New York City that I don't know is named or not, but he has a affair with one of his students, which is very similar to the relationship that Ross has with Elizabeth. So I am 20% into this audiobook. The pacing of it is very slow, so I'm thinking of DNFing it because I'm just having trouble getting into it. But from what I have listened to so far, I really like the character development. The main female character's name is Emma, and she's kind of going through a tough time in her life because she loses her job and she wants to reinvent herself. So she goes to London to move in with Dex, and live with him for a while. That's the part I'm in at the book, and this book is now paused. Now let's go to the movies TBR, which was the Oscar-nominated movies books TBR. The books that I have read for this TBR were All's Well, which was a crossover with the Gilmore Girls TBR because it describes Paris, and the movie this book was paired up with in the post I found on Instagram with The Substance, which I haven't seen yet. And I gave All's Well an A-. It's by the same author of Bunny. I liked it much better than Bunny. I gave it 4.5 stars. I gave Bunny 2.5 stars. The next book is called Cleopatra and Frankenstein. This is by the same author as Blue Sisters, which I still need to read. I liked this book, but it was about an abusive relationship, so I powered through it, even though I can't stand those themes because I just feel so bad for the characters and wonder why they stay in such a relationship. The next book is Luster. So I heard about this book through Gabby Reads. She read it for her Sabrina Carpenter short and sweet marathon last September, and I picked it up because I thought it sounded interesting. I managed to finish it, but I wish I had stopped because I thought it was too sexual. I ended up giving it 3 stars. The next book on this TBR was Mary Jane. This book was paired up with the movie A Complete Unknown, which is the Bob Dylan biopic that Matt and I reviewed in our February and March wrap-up. I will link the description to that video in the comments as well, so you guys can catch up on all the past videos that we've been posting. The next book in this TBR was also paired up with... No. Mercury Pictures Presents was paired up with The Brutalist, which I haven't seen yet. Ours, which was paired up with The Nickel Boys. I DNF'd at 65% due to snow pacing. Roog by Mona Awad was also paired up with The Substance, and I gave that book 4 stars. The Fairy Tale Life of Dorothy Gale was a modern retelling of The Wizard of Oz, which I really, really liked. I gave that book 5 stars. The next book was a reread from last February called The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride, and I gave that book 4.5 stars. The next book is called Tin, which is another modern retelling of The Wizard of Oz. It's part of a new fantasy series called The Fairies of Oz, and it retells The Wizard of Oz through the stories of the secondary characters. So this first book in the series, Tin, is from the voice of the Tin Man, and I really like seeing his side of things, like how he felt about his friendship with Dorothy and moving to, like, becoming human again after seeing the wizard. The next book is called We Sold Our Souls. This book was paired up with A Complete Unknown, and it's by Grady Hendrix, who is a horror author that I really like. Horror was an unexpected genre for me to enjoy. My friends have known me in the past to not like horror books or horror movies or things that are that scary, but my opinions of horror books have changed because I have really liked the books that I have read by Grady Hendrix. This one is no different. I gave this one 4.5 stars, and the only book that I haven't liked by him is his release from January called Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. The final book that I read for this TBR was the Wicked graphic novel, which is the graphic novel that was paired up with the movie that was released in November of last year. And I gave this book 5 stars. I gave the movie 8.5 stars out of 10 on IMDb. The next TBR is Creatures of the Deep. I have read The Soul of the Octopus by 2 books by Cy Montgomery from this TBR, which I gave 4.5 stars to. They are called Of Time and Turtles, which I read in January, and The Soul of the Octopus, which I read last month. Cy Montgomery is also a children's book author who I feel like I'm familiar with because I saw her books in the library as a kid. She's from New Hampshire, so I really liked these books, and I thought they were very interesting, and I would definitely read them again. The final TBR I wanted to talk about for thematic TBR is Silver Screen Book Recs. These are book recommendations that are based on TV shows other than Friends or Gilmore Girls. So the only books I have read on this TBR so far are Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn, which I gave 5 stars to, and I'm looking forward to reading the sequel of it soon called Kills Well with Others that came out at the end of March. And Sourdough by Robin Sloan. The other book by Robin Sloan that I read that I liked, oh boy, I need to look it up now. Let's see. I also read his book, Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookshop, which I also really enjoyed. I gave Sourdough 4 stars, and Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookshop 4.5 stars. Let's see if there's anything else that I am missing. I think so. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Okay, so some other books that I read in April were After Sappho, which is a book about a writer from ancient Egyptian times, and it basically it's a novel that goes through how she inspired other people from history, which I thought was really interesting. Jack Edwards recommended this book to me, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. The next book that I read last month was called Checkout 19, which I got from the library. And I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. The next book is called Elfie by Gregory Maguire. This is the prequel to Wicked that focuses on Elphaba and her relationship with her family. So this is basically the book that inspired the prequel scene in the Wicked movie before Elphaba and Nessa Rose go to Shiz University, which I gave 4.5 stars to. The next book is 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. This book is by the same author as A Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy. I started that trilogy in February, and I'm planning to continue it so I can finish it. Holly Jackson's writing is just so engaging, and you would be surprised that I'm 39 years old and still into reading YA books. But this book and Good Girls Guides to Murder is really fun to read. These Lyrics and Lines recommended this book in their Spring TBR video, and the reason why they picked it is because it's about people going on a spring break vacation, and their car breaks down on the way to their vacation location. So I just really loved it. The thrill, it kept me on the edge of my seat and guessing what would happen next. The next book I read on Cloud Library app, and it's called Garden Spells. It's basically Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman, but set in the springtime. And I really enjoy the setting and the witchy themes, and I'm going to be rereading it again during Halloween so I can compare it to Practical Magic. What is next? The next book that I read last month was Let's Call Her Barbie. This book is by Renee Rosen. I heard about this author through A Book Olive, because she read another book by her last year that is set in like the 1920s or something, and it's like, so this is a historical fiction book. Let's Call Her Barbie is a historical fiction book about the creation of the Barbie doll. So if you have seen the movie that came out a couple of years ago with Margot Robbie and America Ferrera, you will want to read this book. That's the reason why I picked this up, because I wanted to learn more about the creation of the Barbie doll, and I gave it 4.75 stars. So that's almost a 5-star. The next book was a reread that I found on Cloud Library app, and it is Mallory and a Trouble with Twins by Anna M. Martin. This is the 21st book in the Babysitters Club series, and in this book, Mallory babysits twins named Marilyn and Carolyn Arnold, and it's basically about her experiences dealing with these twins and like the miscommunications that she has because she confuses them because they're identical. And that happened a lot with me because I went to high school and college with identical twins, and I always had trouble telling them apart. So I gave Mallory and the Trouble with Twins 4 stars out of 5. The next book I read was called Pictures of You, which was recommended to me by Sarah Crowley and These Lyrics and Lines. And I had to DNF this book at 45% because I just thought it was too sad. It's about a girl who gets in a car accident and loses her memory, and she can't remember anybody in her family. So it was like really depressing. So I just couldn't get through it. The next book is called Small Favors. This book is by Erin A. Craig, and I reviewed it in a previous video, which I will link in the description. The next book I wanted to talk about is Stranded. So this was a book that was in my to-read file on Book Sirens, which was the website that I was recommended to last spring by my friend Kate. And it was in my backlist of books that I still need to review because I have a very small backlist of books I still need to review on Book Sirens because I signed up for the ARCs and then I kind of forgot about them because I was reading so many other books at one time. And then everything happened with Donald Trump wanting to roll back DEI initiatives. So since Amazon supports the rollback of DEI initiatives, I'm not going to be using Book Sirens anymore to review ARCs, unfortunately. But this book, Stranded, is basically a dark romance that is kind of like a modern retelling of The Little Mermaid, where the mermaid washes up on the shore instead of the prince, and the prince rescues her. So it's like reverse story to Little Mermaid, and I really liked it. I gave it 4.5 stars. The next book I wanted to talk about will actually be reviewed in an upcoming video. It will be reviewed in a video that Matt and I are doing at the beginning of May when we do our April and May wrap up. We're going to be doing a book to movie comparison about the audiobook called The Good Neighbor by Maxwell King and the movie A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood with Tom Hanks, which we're watching tonight. Another book that I read was called Yours for the Taking. This is a dystopian novel that is set in a not-so-distant future when global warming has ravaged the earth. And I really enjoyed this book. It's another 5-star recommendation from Gabby Reads. And I wanted to also mention the books that I've been listening to on audiobook because I forget to mention them in my other videos. One of them is Isola, which was the February Reese's Book Club pick. It's by Allegra Goodman, and it's a historical fiction about this girl named Marguerite who ends up being abused by her guardian and is forced to travel with him abroad. And then she has a secret relationship with her guardian's secretary, which causes him, her, and her maid, Damien, to be left alone to survive on an island by themselves. And I almost DNF'd this at 50% because it was very sad, but I don't want to spoil this book for people who might want to listen to it, but I gave this book 4.5 stars because it was very well narrated. The plot was engaging. I really did not like Marguerite's guardian because he sexually abused her, and he should have not been allowed to take her on a sea voyage, or she should have said no and stayed behind. But I guess the good part of her being able to go on this voyage was the fact that she ends up reconnecting with her friend who she leaves behind in the beginning of the book. The next book I'm currently listening to on audiobook from Cloud Library is Pride and Prejudice. I recently got this as a Cloud Library app book, and I am also reading the physical book, which I borrowed from Kathleen. I think instead of listening through all of the chapters I have already read, I'm simply just going to skip ahead to the chapter I'm on, so that way I can finish the book. The other books that I am reading Cloud Library are Blood Over Brighthaven, which has been hyped up on Book Talk by M.L. Wang, by let's see, who has read this book? I believe Riley Marie has reviewed it. I think I first heard about it from Carrie Can Read. And I also think Sarah Without an H has read it, and maybe Rachel Catherine has also read it, and Sarah Caroli. I'm really enjoying it so far. It's really very interesting. I am about 42% through it. And the final book was a reread, which I finished a couple of days ago, and it's called This Woven Kingdom. This is by the same author as the Shatter Me series. I have not read Shatter Me. I think I'm going to wait till next year to read Shatter Me, because from what I'm understanding, that series is a pretty long series, and I don't think I have enough brain energy to get through a long series right now, because I still haven't finished Harry Potter yet. This Woven Kingdom got 4 stars out of 5. So, thank you for tuning in. I will be back after Mother's Day with a new reading progress video, and in that video I will also be reviewing Eat the Ones You Love, Great Big Beautiful Life, and Just Say You'll Remember Me. I almost said Just for the Summer. Don't ask me why. Oh, and I didn't go over my Asian Readathon TBR that I'm doing with Cindy. So the books that I'm reading for that TBR are Being Ace, A Thousand Splendid Suns, A Sign of Affection, which is a graphic novel about a girl who falls in love with a guy on the subway, and she's deaf, so they communicate through sign language. The next book is called Days at the Mortuary Bookshop. Death on the Nile, which is an Agatha Christie mystery, which I'm excited to read because I read 2 Agatha Christie mysteries for the Winterween marathon that Gabby Reads did back in January, so I'm really excited to read more Agatha Christie mysteries. The next book is Connie Chung's memoir, and then I'm also going to be rereading Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. The next book that I am reading is I Am Not Jessica Chen. Then I'm going to be reading Julie Chan is Dead, which Gabby Reads recently reviewed in her ARCs video that I had to pause watching so I could film this video. I'll get back to it. Another reread I'm going to be doing for this TBR is I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai. So I'm really excited to read that one again because I haven't read it in a long time. Then Immaculate Conception by Lauren Ling Brown, the same author of Natural Beauty. So this is her new release that came out last month, and I'm really excited to read it. And the final book on my TBR for Asian Readathon is The Forest of Stolen Girls. So now this is where I sign off, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your weekend. The next wrap-up video that Matt and I will be doing will be out on May 19th. The next reading progress video I will be posting will be out on May 15th. So have a good next couple weeks. We'll see you soon. Bye.